Supersonic Digest 8. Oh boy, Antoine's on the cover. We all know he's gonna have such a creative new backstory. This seems so pointless. I heard it was just, I used to be a coward, now I'm not anymore. And 100 pages of the shit? This better be good. We start out where the previous issue left off, in a simulation of Nicole. Because Nicole can do literally anything with no explanation. Sheesh, at least in the preboot, it was explained that she had nanobots. Antoine looks at the defeated Robotnik machine in Nicole's simulation, and thinks bone as a standalone word. I've never seen that in French before. I'm pretty sure they'd only say très bien. He says that Sally's on the way to helping them. And if the text box writer knew that you have to know who Sonic is, why'd he bother getting a name tag anyways? How condescending is it that we get name tags for the main characters in every issue? Well, I forget if it's that frequent, but Archie didn't do this. It just wastes comic space. Finally, they give up the exiled name theming for the stories. Antoine then has a stupid line where he thinks that fighting these nightmarish robots is not what he signed up for. He's a freedom fighter! Fighting robots is mandatory! I'd also like to point out that for a comic that's so focused on giving everyone name tags too much to try to cater to the 1% of people who don't know who these characters are when they bought the comic, it's pretty skewed priorities to not also remind us that they're in Nicole's simulation. I think that's a bit more important. What if someone bought this issue but didn't get the free comic book day one? What if they read this issue first because there's no indication of which one to read first on the cover? And Antoine's recapping about himself comes a bit more out of nowhere than Sally's and Rotor's, but not by much. Still, it's even more unlikely that Antoine would start reflecting on his life in the exact same area and time that all of his other friends did, excluding the game characters. It'd be more natural if they were all talking about their memories at a campfire. Antoine says he came to Mobotropolis on the Apprentice Exchange program. Is that a realistic thing for royalty to do? I mean, isn't the king worried about spies or something? I don't know. He says that his father told him to be brave before he sent him to another country without coming with them. How old was he? Isn't that parental abandonment? I assume he was just a teenager. So, 1, that's illegal of his father to do. He's not 18 yet, I assume. And I assume his father didn't hate him, so, huh? There's no reason for him not to come with them. And 2, Archie made more sense than this, because of course Antoine wasn't a real soldier because he was too young. Even Ken Penders made more sense. This is just condescending. I think there's a reason I thought Antoine didn't deserve to be in charge of a bunch of training royal guards and telling them what to do in Sonic Miniseries 2. Also, you know who first introduced Antoine's father as a concept? Penders. I'm pretty sure he was the first writer to mention him. So even referencing the character, you'd think that would be forbidden. Even more forbidden than referencing Eggman Nega. I assumed, because I have common sense and know how the rules work, that Antoine would, if anything, have a mother, and not a father again. It looks like Flynn didn't care and wasted the creative potential of that. Unless he does show his mother later. But it'd be twice as unlikely that his mother would send him away too. This would actually make more sense if Antoine was an unruly troublemaker, and then his parents would want to send him to the military to toughen him up and send him away from them. He swore to protect the country, and then we see another panel showing that Antoine had to run away when Eggman took over the castle. And he angsts about it in the narration, even though he should know he had no choice in the matter. So if this is supposed to be a catalyst for him feeling guilty about being a coward, that was forced. Also, I could have sworn I saw a clearly young-looking Antoine alongside Sally just an issue ago in this exact same flashback. Let's see. Antoine looks noticeably shorter than Rosie here, and looks even younger than Mutt. And there's zero indication that he's dressed like a soldier like now. Flynn is such a sloppy writer, they can't even remember the continuity he established 1 issue ago. And this is far from the only time he's done this. This issue is implying that Antoine's much older than Sally because he was a teenager when she was 5, which would make him lusting after Sally forced and creepy. There's a good reason why Sadie M had Sally look so different when she was 5 years old. If you're gonna have younger Antoine look exactly the same, it's confusing. In Sonic Underground, in the pilot, you saw a kid Sonic being a head shorter than his Uncle Chuck, which was supposed to tell you that Chuck was the adult and he wasn't. And Antoine is a head shorter than Rosie here. We're told that he stayed by Sally's side to protect her and was too scared to leave Knothole on his own. Again, that was smart of him. Everyone was too scared to do that. When Rosie left Knothole for a little bit in the past of Sadie M, she had gotten roboticized for it. For fuck's sake, the Archie comic knew to have Antoine be the same age as Sally. Sadie M did too. Here, I'm either supposed to believe that Antoine was a teenager when Sally was 5 all of a sudden, or that he got hired as a soldier for the king at 5 years old. On the bright side, he was called an apprentice program, but still, 5 years old is a little young to be an apprentice. Child labor laws are a thing. And teenagers can't join the military. That's why Reese had to lie about his age in Malcolm in the Middle. I highly doubt teenagers would be allowed to join an apprenticeship program, let alone one for becoming a soldier, right? Does that even exist? Wouldn't that be redundant? What could that teach you and make you go through that soldiers learning to be soldiers wouldn't go through already in boot camp? It's already hard enough to believe that the king would accept people from another country as his soldiers, like who literally just came to his country. I mean, this is a medieval, king. Yep, we're told that Antoine was in love with Sally. How old is he at this point? We can't possibly know the answer here. What kind of backstory doesn't even tell you the exact ages of the characters? At least he explains that he liked her for her personality as well as her looks. And it's so predictable that she rejected him, because that would have been nice to Antoine. And Flynn knew that it would humor the fans to have him with Bunny instead, because they're already used to that. Even though Antoine is much closer to Sally in personality than Bunny or Sonic. They're both cautious people who fight Eggman, and they even have a similar color scheme. Also, since when does a kid want to court and give someone a bouquet at 5 years old? Kids at that age don't know what attraction is. They just decide they like someone, and who knows if it's that or not. Did he have to keep this in his backstory if it was going to be pointless and just irritate me? If this was meant to create a lot of sympathy for the character, it completely pales in comparison to what he did to Rotor. His narration says that it took a long time for him to understand why he was rejected. Why wouldn't Sally have explained herself? That's what people do. That's what good, honest people do. Then it goes on again about how he was ashamed of his own cowardice, when most of the village would be just as scared of Eggman and his robots as him, and he doesn't have any special powers or talents that not just anybody could do. I don't know why his text boxes have a wig on it. That's not funny. Archie didn't do that. It at least explains that he was being loud and self-assured to hide his insecurity over cowardice, as if we couldn't figure that out on our own. Oh, then he reveals that it didn't help matters when Sonic showed up. Fuck you! So let me get this straight. He dedicates entire issues to establishing redundant backstories for the Sadie M characters, but Sonic, the most important character, gets nothing. He just popped up out of nowhere. He didn't used to live in Mobotropolis. He didn't always live in Knothole where it was always safe. How did he not get roboticized or captured as a kid? There's a reason that Sadie M and Archie had him living in Mobotropolis with the rest of his friends since he was born. This is so stupid! He just popped up out of thin air? Why did he choose to go to Knothole? Chuck was in Mobotropolis. He fled from it. And there's no indication that Sonic's parents are anywhere. Did they just die? Wouldn't Sonic talk about them? You'd think Sonic would have been living in Mobotropolis too, since Chuck was there. Who else would have raised him? Why did he choose to go to Knothole? He just magically stumbled into the place for no reason? What took him so long? It brings up tons of questions that are begging to be answered. This is a stupid change in a voodoo shark. I am not accepting this. It's like, he's only doing this because he wants to keep the game characters and the Sadie M characters not canon to the game separate in his head. So of course they're separate because they are in a meta sense. That wasn't necessary. This issue sucks. He reveals that seeing Sonic made him realize how false his boasting was. Why did he need to realize that? Because of the creator's pet main character from the games instead of Wouldn't he have known all along that he was lying? That he was afraid like everyone else? I'm not seeing him be scared of things that most people aren't. Like, he's not screaming at a spider or a shadow on the wall. Even Sadie M was better at portraying cowardice than this. This is just, take our word for it, he was a coward. Even though you'd be scared of these things too. He's so bad at characterization that he can't even get Antoine's a coward right, which was most of his personality. Am I supposed to be impressed that he stripped him of all personality because he lost a negative trait? They might as well not have him around. He's just there to have bad dialogue now. That's embarrassing. We see that already. Antoine was inspired by seeing Bunny, who was inexplicably having a hard time walking and got up from a wheelchair even though she has cybernetic limbs. There was never any indication in the canon that anyone would have to learn to walk again with brand new cyborg legs, which they'd already instinctively know how to use because they know how to use normal legs. And these legs have super strength, at least her arm does, so if anything, they would always be stronger, not weaker. She wouldn't need to build up strength in them gradually because they're not organic limbs. This was just an unnecessarily dark and edgy change to the lore for the reboot, as another thinly veiled excuse to torment the Sadie M character. There's no reason to change her backstory. In Bunny's first introduction to Archie, she showed no signs of this. She was immediately able to move just fine after being half roboticized. Go figure. You don't need to be trying too hard to make it realistic. This is a world with roboticization in it, and cybernetic limbs no problem. Not sure if technology has advanced to the point of that. It would be advanced enough that she wouldn't be having trouble walking again. I feel like it's tacky to have him immediately fall in love with Bunny the first time he saw her, and purely because of her appearance. Because of course Flynn couldn't think of anything else for him to compliment. When, sure, Bunny liked his appearance when she first showed up in Archie, but she also flirted with Sonic. This was right off the heels of him crushing on Sally, who's smarter than Bunny is. And now he's immediately eager to settle for her? In Archie, this was done much more naturally. He spent a long time being friends with Bunny first, so he got to know her. And they only started dating when she said that she cares about him when he felt like no one else did, and that she admires his courage. And then she gave him a kiss. And before that, Antoine gave her a bunch of kisses for saving him so many times from Metropolis. Even Ken Penders is less tacky but romantic build-up than this. At least with Antoine and Bunny. Hell, even with Julie, Sue, and Knuckles, he had the tact to make a story arc about it, and that was after they had already been friends for a long time, to the point where it felt weird that they weren't dating yet. Here it's like Flynn didn't care. He was just rushing it because he only did it to appease the fans. The first panel where Antoine talks about Bunny, and already her narration says that she was so beautiful back then. It's not like we're told that him learning to crush on Bunny was just a gradual process. Love at first sight does happen, but he was just trying to get over Sally. That wouldn't be real love at that point. He'd just be trying to distract himself from Sally, like Sonic used Fiona for. It's just as sudden and underwhelming as that. It'd help if we were told exactly how long it's been since he gave up on Sally. Like years. Antoine's narration says that they had joined the Freedom Fighters together and fought for so long. Again, how old were they? How lazy is the writer that he doesn't even care enough to give us a number? He had plenty of opportunities. This is a minor thing, and he doesn't even do that right. I can only assume that the reason Antoine insisted on going on these missions was to try to prove himself to his friends. And they're so desperate to toughen him up that they recklessly and irresponsibly let him go on missions where he can't do anything unique and really useful, and is in constant danger the whole time. At least Bunny can make a force field in front of her. Why didn't Rotor give Antoine a ray gun to attack from a distance if he was such a coward? I have a question. Why doesn't he have a shield? If he's about swords, well, swords and shields go hand in hand for a reason. Also, why doesn't he have knight's armor too if he's so scared? And he joined a kingdom where the soldiers just have swords instead of guns. Antoine is shown telling Bunny that he's not brave and is simply too scared to run away. This is just one personality trait, and that's all that's being focused on for multiple pages. This does make him relatable, but this trait goes away, for the most part. Bunny told him that him fighting despite being brave is courageous, just like in Archie. That one sentence sums up everything she said. At least it is explained that they were friends for a long time before he dated her. Because of course he needed to build up the courage to ask, and it'd be more rushed to have Bunny ask him right away. But this is just ripping off how Penders did it in an inferior way, because it's not a knight, You can't even see any background behind Bunny when she's telling him this again. And it's not her comforting him and saying that she does care about him after he angsted that other people didn't. And again, Bunny having this talk with him, let alone dating him, is a Pender's concept. So if they're allowed to use Pender's concepts, where's Jeffrey? Pender said on Twitter that he has no control over whether they use his characters or not. What prompted Antoine to confess to Bunny that he's a coward? Did he make it really obvious just a moment ago? That's also lazy. Everything about flashback panels with time skips is lazy. It's the laziest way to tell a story. Also, the French tend to use the indefinite article the same way that we do. Antoine wouldn't say that he's the coward here. If you don't know how a French speaker speaks English, do some research. I think even French people learning to speak English would be embarrassed by him. Also, we once again run into the plot hole of why is Antoine having trouble speaking English when he grew up around English speakers? His father had to send him to Metropolis instead of being the flag waver for the king before he was born this time. So does that mean he did live in France with his father? That doesn't change the fact that he spent years with nothing but English around him. Anyone would get good at a language after years of that. And if this is supposed to be a backstory for him, wouldn't it be more interesting to see at least a bit of world building regarding the country he used to live in? Also, speaking of inferior Russian ripoffs, we see Antoine proposing to Bunny in a dialogueless flashback panel. And of course, Amy is the only one to witness it because Flynn loves Amy, even though Sonic's the main character. Anyways, wasn't it common sense to have him have dialogue here? This is supposed to be an important scene for their characters. This is so lazy and half-assed with no care at all. I was underwhelmed by his proposal in Archie because he just said one text bubble where he asked her to marry him. He didn't explain what he loved about her and say that, "You make me happier than I've ever been. And if you let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making you feel the exact same way." You know, which even Friends had Chandler Bing say. His proposal was much better. Sonic isn't about romance, so the scene shouldn't go on too long, but I'd rather it last a decent length for main characters that we and the writer are supposed to care about. I didn't think you could get any lazier than Archie. I always assumed that we would see him propose in an actual real-time scene after remembering that Antoine was married to Bunny in the preboot. And so I was expecting him to plan on marrying her again, and we'd see the characters at their wedding. Instead, he married her in a flashback. So, her wedding ring in one of the Memories arc issues really was there, and we will forever be cheated out of properly seeing him propose to her. It's common sense that when you have a second chance to do something much better, you take it. Antoine thinks that he did sign up for this, so I did not immediately get that. And good, he got the French right this time. And Bunny has long hair behind her again. Can't she have her cowgirl suit back? Some people would say she looks like a hooker with that shirt. At least the cowgirl suit took advantage of her southern accent. Then Sally sneaks up behind him and startles him, in the present day. So, he hasn't gotten over being a coward. But the narration was trying to imply he's not anymore. Because he was mentioning being a coward so much, and he started freedom fighting. Anyways, he has tedious dialogue, and Sally uncharacteristically humors him and asks where Bunny is, I guess because she's in a hurry. And she's told that she's scouting on the other side, and Sally wants to link up with her and end this. At no point did the issue tell the audience that they were in a simulation of Nicole's the whole time. The audience would be pretty confused about what they were doing and totally detached, not seeing why they're bothering, what their goal is, other than, I guess, killing all the robots. The panel says that the Sonic comic origins will sadly continue in Sonic Super Digest 9. I thought this would be 100 pages of hand cramps. At least Sally apologized for scaring him. In fact, I just checked, and there's 120 pages! Wait, what? The next panel is showing me an older story of Archie's. At least it's not a Pender's one. But if they're not allowed to use preboot concepts anymore, well, this is showing off preboot concepts. And it would be confusing to a more ignorant audience who doesn't understand that they're separate continuities. How is a kid supposed to understand that this isn't canon to the reboot he's reading? Didn't I hear that Archie got into trouble for reprinting issues of Preboot Archie? If they can do this, why couldn't they have just continued Preboot Archie? They were still making money off Preboot stories. How did they ever decide which stories to show off? I hope this means that the rest of the issue is like this and so I can quit now. That 100 pages thing is more of a lie than I thought. Keep your reprints to reprint stories. Like have entire books dedicated to reprints, like a Sonic graphic novel series. Granted, these stories are a million times better than anything in the reboot. Or at least a few of them are. But they're not canon to it, so this is a gigantic waste of comic space that could have gone towards new reboot stories. Which is what I naturally assumed would be the case instead. I bet this is the only comic that puts pre-reboot stories in its reboot issues. Bottom line, this issue sucked. It tells me that Antoine's dad cruelly sent him away from him to another city for no apparent reason to be a soldier, instead of him being a soldier in his own country, and there's no explanation about what age he was. I'm sure he was a teenager, but then we see that he crushed on Sally when she was a 5-year-old. He couldn't be implying that on purpose, could he? And we clearly saw him look way younger than Rosie last issue in that flashback. So is the writer failing or the artist? It's just repeating the same thing over and over, that he was ashamed of being afraid when he was only afraid of what everyone else in Knothole was. And apparently he didn't get over it because Sally startles him in the present. It's such a basic plot, but if the plot is so poorly written, I'm gonna be talking about it forever anyways. The story makes no attempt at reminding the audience that it's taking place in a cool simulation, and you'll be completely detached from what the heroes are doing in the present because nothing really happens, let alone matters. We didn't need this framing device wasting comic space that conveniently has all of the Sadium heroes reflecting on their past at the same general time and place. All this did was give him a needlessly confusing, unnecessary backstory. The really enraging part of the issue was that apparently Sonic just showed up in Knothole, and that was the first time Antoine ever saw him. Where was he earlier? Why'd he come here? He's just separate from them now because he's a game character and Flynn's biased in favor of the games. To the point where his uncle ran out of Metropolis, but he didn't. Who was raising him then? And there's no way Bunny would have trouble walking. That immediately reminded me of that issue in RG Sonic Online where we were supposed to believe that her getting new cybernetics would require her to take like months or weeks of recovery. It's bad fanfiction writing. Go figure, basically all of these rebooted backstories have been downgraded so far. That's what happens when you don't hire a professional. Wait, what? There's a new page? There's a repeat of the Sonic Riders prologue from Archie's preboot. But there's a new page, where Eggman has Jet captured in his base and tells him that Jet thought he could steal his Vapor Accelerator to upgrade his airboard. First off, how did Jet know about that thing so he could go try to steal it? We'll never learn the answer, will we? Second, it still makes no sense that he could be easily captured by a robot when he's speeding ahead on his airboard, where he bragged that he was faster than Sonic. You'd think he would have noticed the robot because we have eyes in the front of our heads. So I'm guessing none of this will ever be explained. So Jet's capture will be arbitrary to force the plot. He could have explained his capture as he was snuck up on when he was sleeping, at least. Jet expects me to believe times have been tough since he quit the Armada, even though he's a thief with a fast airboard. I'd expect him to be getting a ton of cash and treasure all the time. Wait, what the fuck? Flynn has Eggman say that he knew Jet was going as fast as Sonic on the airboard, and yet he still had the robot somehow knock Jet out after coming out of nowhere. Jet would have seen it and avoided it. Like, why did he even go anywhere near the robot? And also, Jet doesn't know who Sonic is, even though Sonic is like the only person on the planet who could run at the speed of sound, and makes himself known for fighting Eggman. I can only assume that Jet never watched the news or anything and is totally ignorant about pop culture. Even though I'm sure a thief could steal a television just fine, and everyone gets tired after a day of work. But I guess that'll never be explained either. And Jet annoys me by thinking that Sonic's a fraud right away, and saying that he's the fastest guy around, even though he's only fast because of his airboard. Eggman likes his attitude, and recruits him to rough up Sonic, saying that he won't kill Jet if he agrees. Is he that desperate for workers? I mean, he could just send another robot at Sonic. He should explain that he knows Sonic will hold back against an organic being, so it's actually smarter to send organic beings to him. So, if he was planning to kill Jet before, and this is a point in time where he somehow can't roboticize anyone, and was too stupid to think to put cybernetics with bombs in people instead, then why didn't he just kill him immediately? He would have never gotten to this point. How did the giant robot even know to keep Jet alive instead of just capturing him? Why did he order the robot to keep him alive? It's like every time I go back to a Flynn issue, it just gets more forced. And he's happy about working for Eggman for some reason, when I'm sure he would have gotten roboticized too and only gotten free because of the BEM. This story sucks. I don't know if this was part of the original story and just wasn't included on the site for the original issue, or if they added this new page in for the reboot. That would require effort, so I guess it was there all along. But I've been better off without it. A bad explanation is even worse than none at all. I was actually better off not seeing him interact with Eggman, because then the revelation that he wasn't specifically captured to be hired by Eggman from the very beginning just makes it stupider. I assumed his whole reason for capturing him was to recruit him, because that'd be keeping it simple. Also, most of the stories that are reprinted in this issue from the preboot are by Flynn, as if he couldn't show any more bias. It's a miracle he brought himself to put Tuan with the wind there. Not to mention Antoine's vain refrain. Why would you choose that story of all things? One of the stories wasting comics based on crap is Fragile, which says that's by Scott Tipton and David Tipton, not Flynn. I forget if I said it was by Flynn in the review, but you can't really blame me for assuming that when Flynn somehow managed to write nearly every story. But yeah, this issue sucked. Overly basic story, predictable, and it made no sense when it did try to change things.